The Palawan, before the whole island of Philippines, whole Palawan region was called Palawan. The people were called Palawan. In fact, I was telling James, we were one of the least studied tribes in the Philippines. In fact, in the 80s, when I was studying in Philippine Science High School, I was trying to research about the tribe, and the only thing that they wrote was the Tagbanwa and the Batak. And they say, we're not sure if the Palawan, the Palawanon, or the Palawanin is a distinct tribe. And then when I was a kid, I was asking my mom, I would go, I bet you're from a tribe. You're not telling me because I can't understand any of your language. Like the tribal language became like a language of secrets, and then like, why does everybody sound like birds in this house? Because and ironically in the 90s, a French anthropologist finally revealed that the Palawan is a distinct tribe and that our language sounds like birds.
For both of you, I grew up in the Philippines, and I have this feeling that whenever you bring up tribal, like our ancestors, it's as if you're a lesser class, especially if you're dark-skinned. I don't know if you guys observe that, but in the Philippines, it's, like when you talk about, oh, he's a Ifugao, he's a Negrito, it's like degrading or something. People don't like that. So how do we kind of even start?
James is a film student.
How do we start to kind of change that?
Well, I think, I don't know, for example, like Kidlat, he paved the way by filming the Ifugao and the stories. He paved the way for the real, the us, our generation had indigenous blood. And then when we saw that it could be done beautifully and brilliantly, we became braver. And, it's really ironic, it's really the miseducation of the US. Telling that the tribal people are primitive and civilized. I was like discussing it with you a while ago. I'm really surprised to think we came from a royal lineage of shaman kings, and then 2 generations from me, they became ashamed, just like that. And because it's miseducation. Like when I went home, my cousins would tell me, "Aren't you ashamed that your relatives are Palawan? That we are primitive and civilized?" But no, that word was created by the Westerners to tell us that our way is wrong. We have a complete culture. We have a writing. We had the theater structure. We had chants that would last for 7 nights. We had rituals that were spiritual, and we were one with nature. Nature was one with us, so that we could control nature. So we really an advanced culture ahead from all these other cultures. This Western culture tries to kill other cultures.
I like the way Kanakan said that he was coming from a royal shamanic tribe, and then suddenly he was ashamed from shamanic to shame. Wow. And in a way, this is what globalized culture is like perpetuating. Colonization said we are superior, our religion is superior, our way of dressing is superior, and you guys, you just better be like us. Now, I think there's a mistaken notion that they talk about preserving culture. Preserving culture is not necessarily a goal in itself. It can be the effect of first neutralizing that shame. If the colonial school system, okay, I think most of you are familiar with the Thomasites. Okay, when America had decided to use the policy of benevolent assimilation. My son accidentally said benevolent assassination. When you kill the culture, you kill the people. But when they decided on that attack, they sent 300 public school teachers on a boat, on a ship called the USS Thomas. And that has been the basis of our school system until today. It's all is memorizing and rote, and you're not even learning to think in a language that you're comfortable in. You have to learn all these grammar rules that are so far away. But maybe it's time for a lot of the young people there and here just to feel, hey, we have something to contribute to the world. And I think that will be the beginning where people will stop looking down on people who wear G-strings or who have tails wagging behind them. And then people will begin to see that the rituals and the prayers and the connection with with the upper world, and is a balance that the material world needs today. So it's recognizing that it was not what the missionaries and the Thomasites told us that we have to be ashamed of. If we get the first generations to, I mean, that's it. What he just said, that if my film influenced him not to be ashamed of his tribal connections, those are the first steps. And I think we just have to believe that darating rin tayo dun sa next stage.
We will get to the next stage.
Oh yeah, I thought your Paul was great. Wizards in Tagalog.
They will be by the time.
Okay.
One question here.
I'm pretty curious about the ritual in the movie. So are they still happening in Philippines?
The rituals.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yes, they're still existing in Palawan, the basag ritual that was in my film, right? Because they're like my uncles who does the rituals and my elders. So, like I was, like in the Philippines, it's ironic because like when the Americans and the Spanish came, the Americans came, the indigenous cultures were preserved. We actually, the colonizers, we defeated them. We know we were not colonized, but now, when the Philippine government suddenly happened, it's our fellow Filipinos who are trying to colonize us. In fact, if I talk to the deeper forests where my Palawan relatives are, they don't consider themselves Filipinos. They consider themselves Palawan. We are Palawan. We are not Filipinos. So it's really ironic because like in the 70s, in the martial law times, when Elizalde had this panamin and started going around and raping the land and getting all the riches of the indigenous peoples, it happened to our community too, where they started, stealing our islands at gunpoint. In fact, one of my future films will be about those land grabbing issues. And up to now, even though the dictatorship has fallen, they haven't returned those islands to our tribe, even amidst the so-called democracy. So, yeah, like I was telling him, I could have done a Che Guevara because my relatives were already, there was a point where they were telling me, now, why don't we just fight and then let's separate from the Philippines? Because we are rich enough. They took our islands because of oil. We have oil in those islands. That's why they wouldn't return it up to now. But then I said, no, we're a shamanistic tribe and we've lost our magic already. So we don't have the most poisonous dart that could kill one battalion in one hit. I mean, no, we'll try to do it peacefully. So I tried leading the tribe, having applied for an ancestral domain claim. But of course, the evil government starts doing a divide and rule and starts making a fake tribe. When they saw my film, they figured out who it was and then paid my other relatives to be part of them. So it was really still a struggle, but I guess through cinema, I will show that it's our land before everyone else came.
The cinema is a double-bladed sword. No? I mean, how can you keep rituals or even beliefs or core values alive if every other film, or not only every other film, 90% of films that come in have that car chase and the blah 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 blah, and it's this is later. Please come up and look at the installation. But here below is it's an eagle made out of film. Okay, for me that's the imperial eagle of Hollywood that somehow keeps perpetuating the message. Your culture is low class. Your nose is not sharp enough to look like Tom Cruise or whoever. You have to have lighter skin. These are all values that become standard, that become the norm. Because we watch movies and the movies are constantly brainwashing us with that. There's one ritual that we managed to revive in Ifugao. At the end of the harvest, usually the Kadangyan, who is like the leaders of the village, the biggest land owners, would call in a shaman and they would do a prayer. And if the shaman says, okay, it's good time to declare the end of harvest, so somebody will shout down to the valley, hey, everybody, it's the end of harvest. And for one day they would have a ritual, and this is all the three villages would go down to the river and they would have a tug of war. Well, that's That's what they call it in America, tug of war. I don't know if there's another better word. Tug of peace, okay. They come and they play, and it's a day of it's like a Sabbath day. Everybody's having fun. After months and months of back-breaking harvesting, they have this ritual, and we were able to revive it from 15 years ago. Just last July, we had the 15th tug of peace, and it's through little steps like this, and maybe because they hadn't been watching too many movies, they were much more receptive to the return of those rituals. Plus, slowly also tell them not to be ashamed to wear their G-strings, not to be ashamed to invoke their deities. It's when the young start believing that, I think you've broken the cycle of shame, from shaman to shame.
I have a question. We only have a few minutes left. But how can Filipinos in the U.S., and many of us don't even know what tribe we're from, how can we go back to that, right? How can we know our ancestors? How can we know what it was like? What can we do here to practice if we don't even know what tribe we're from?
Well, maybe it's not a quest to be literally looking for where was my grandfather born and did he build that seventh terrace on the seventh mountain. I think the fact that you know you have some parentage or lineage that comes from the Philippines, and it may not be as royal as Kanakans here, but just the fact that you know it, I think you can also come back to the cultural values of home. And if you begin to feel that it is important, this kapwa, this compassion, that's the start. Eventually, if you take a few trips home, you might be able to still trace a grandfather or great-grandfather up to where. But the literal search is maybe a personal one. But I think as Filipino Americans, be curious about the indigenous of your people, believe in the indigenous of your forefathers, and I think you will be able to contribute something to global culture.
So, the words primitive and uncivilized were created to tell us that our way is not right, and we should copy what the West is, that they are what is right. That's why I believe the Filipinos or the Asians in the diaspora are very important, because you will show the people in the Philippines, the people in your countries, that by going back to our roots, by knowing ourselves, it's what will make us a stronger people. Because all the Filipinos are has this colonial mentality. There's an epidemic of apathy and colonial mentality where they look at the West, they look at you, they look at Filipino Americans. But if you show them that by going back to our roots, that going back to our indigenousness, that going back to ourselves, but by knowing ourselves, then we will evolve into a better society. Is universe answer? No?
Okay. And last week we heard, remember Mamerto said, is to live what is he doing? He lives in Ohio. So how does he, practice or go back to his roots? Is he practices his traditions. He lives as an Ifugao in Ohio. So let's not be ashamed of our culture as Filipinos. Eat with a spoon and be proud of it. Because what's the first thing I learned here is don't use a spoon. People would tell me in the cafeteria because people use a fork here and they would make fun of me. So now I eat with a spoon and I'm very proud of it. Even those little steps, I don't know what it would mean for you individually, but there are different ways. Little steps, big steps, who knows, right? So I want to thank our speakers today. It rounds up our 4 speakers from last week to this week. And we'll continue, we'll sum up, we'll do a synthesis on Wednesday of all these discussions, these presentations. But before you leave, this is something I forgot to do last Monday, but I'm not going to forget today. I would like to take a picture of you with the students. And the way I want to do it is, I want you both to stand here in the middle, and then some students will sit in the front, stand with you, stand on top of the chairs, but let's make sure to get everyone. I know this is a big class. So actually, we'll start